Father Pius Peter. I'm a member of the board of directors. This year being my 9th anniversary of my confirmation, I'm delighted to still continue to serve on the board of directors of the Legal Services Corporation. Technology is wonderful, sometimes it's complicated. There we go. I'm just going to talk for a few minutes about our task force and the work we've done. One thing I have to say, I was surprised when John asked me to be on a co-chair of the disaster relief task forces. I didn't know anything about them. I knew they were bad and they were to be avoided, but I wasn't sure what I could bring to the conversation. But I knew LSC well enough and knew our board well enough to know, thankfully, that I would not be doing this myself, and for the benefit of all of you as well. Because we had a long history at LSC, at least with this board, before we came up with this task force. It began really, I think, shortly after we were on the board with our original task forces, with the task forces on pro bono and our financial oversight. Both of them did something that we had really never seen at LSC before, and that was opening up a task force to invite not just LSC folks, not just legal aid folks, but experts from throughout the U.S. with regards to financial aid, or financial oversight, and with regards to pro bono. And LSC's report, especially the Pro Bono Task Force, was a report not simply to itself, but to the legal community, in ways in which we all could work together to create a better environment for pro bono in legal services and throughout provision of legal services in the United States. And that, I think, continued. Our thoughts with regards to this, with disaster relief, began early on. Shortly, a few years after we came on the board, Hurricane Sandy, of course, hit in 2012. And for the first time, I think there were funds given to LSC to dole out as grants with regards to disaster recovery after Sandy, which we were pleased to do for a number of years. But it was shortly after Sandy, if you remember, in January of 2013, when we were at our board meeting in Louisiana. It was a wonderful board meeting. Let me just say, if you recall, it was also between Mardi Gras and the Super Bowl, so not the best time to be there. But I think being there with the remnants of Hurricane Katrina still affecting Louisiana, with us dealing with the impact of Hurricane Sandy on our grantees, I think that was really the moment in which we really began to think about, as a board, disaster recovery and our role in it. That was added to by a very generous grant that we received in around 2013 from a very large donor with regards to, or a large funder with regards to disaster recovery in the Midwest. That relationship with that funder has continued, and we've done an enormous amount of work since then with our grantees in the Midwest to increase knowledge and preparedness with regards to disasters. And we hope to expand that with the help of this task force to the rest of the world, to the rest of our grantees. But this particular task force, I think, really took hold in 2016 at our meeting in Cambridge. We were generously hosted by the Dean of Harvard Law. We had an in with the Dean at the time. Very nice one. She was on our board, still is. But we had, at that meeting, we had a report, two different ones, from grantees with regards to the effects of disasters on legal services. And then I think a very important panel with the Chief Justices of the Florida and Texas Supreme Courts with regards to disaster recovery in judicial systems in those two states, looking at the recent hurricanes that have been in both of those states. And I think that, more than anything else, was probably the impetus for the announcement of our Disaster Recovery Task Force a little over a year ago. And since then, we kicked off a year ago, May of last year, with a meeting here in DC, which John alluded to. We were pleased enough. I'm sorry Chef Andre can't be here today. It's wonderful to have him at that meeting. He's a great voice, a very passionate voice, not just about food, but about feeding people. And I think he gave that kickoff meeting, I think, a great spirit. And we began to organize the 4 sections you see in the disaster recovery report that we have, with the 4 committees that we broke into. And I have to credit Latham and Watkins and the folks there who did just the lion's share of the administrative, logistical, and just document production work that allowed those committees to flourish and take off and to produce the reports that you have there. They have been with us this entire way and frankly deserve far more credit than anything I've ever done. But that continued with meetings both in Miami and Miami this year and last year in San Antonio. One of the things I'm grateful for is when we did this task force, both at the kickoff and in the subsequent meetings, and especially in the committees, this again wasn't just legal services folks. This was folks in federal disaster recovery, state disaster recovery, local disaster recovery, our grantees, people in academia who would work with disaster recovery. We brought as wide a pool of expertise as we could together to help us figure out what the real issues were and how we can best go about them. And I am delighted to see so many faces that I saw either in San Antonio or Miami, or even in our kickoff here in DC a little over a year ago, here again today, because they've been such an invaluable help to us in the production of this. And these committees have been meeting over the last year, mostly by phone. I was sat in on quite a number of them, at least listened in on a number of them, and I'm always amazed at how active they were, how engaged our committee members were with regards to this production. I'm then grateful finally to LC and for Latham in producing this final report. So this gives you, I think, a little bit of the background. This report that you see in front of you is really almost a decade in the making with regards to the board at Legal Services, and especially the very fervent and dedicated work of our committee members and as well as Latham and Watkins in support of us over the last year. And they really deserve an incredible round of applause for the work and time and effort they put into it. And as you can see, I think, a report that really reflects that thoughtfulness, that carefulness, and that wide diversity of voices and expertise that come up with this conclusion. And you will see, I think, as we come today, as I introduce or invite Jim and his panel to come forward, and you'll see some of the quality of expertise that we've had over the last year, and you'll be able to hear a little from today. So thank you for your time, thank you for your attention, and for all those who have put in so much work to this task force, thank you for your dedication to this.